Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session on conducting your first virtual session exploring Zoom, WebEx, and Adobe Connect. My name is David Witt. I'll be your host today. I'm speaking to you from the Ken Blanchard Companies headquarters in San Diego, California. It is my pleasure to introduce our three subject matter experts. The first is Brent Bystedt. Brent is the virtual practice leader for the Ken Blanchard Companies. He's been with Blanchard since 2007. Brent is a subject matter expert in many of Blanchard's virtual programs and training platforms, and is one of Blanchard's most experienced trainers. In 2019 alone, Brent delivered over 200 virtual sessions. Brent, welcome to the presentation today.
Thanks for having me, Dave.
Sonia Furini is the owner and director of virtual and e-learning services at Virtual Learning Collaborative. With a background in the training industry, Sonia is an expert on virtual learning platforms, and especially the platforms that we're going to be covering here today. Sonia and her team are the partners with the Ken Blanchard Companies to produce all of our virtual deliveries. Sonia, so good to have you here also.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
And Dan Glaser is the Learning Systems Manager at the Ken Blanchard Companies. Dan's been charged with creating best practices for the production of our virtual designs for almost 20 years. Dan's wonderful distinction is Dan was our original virtual producer. Dan, thank you for being here also.
Good morning, thank you.
We've got a fun structure today's presentation. Our three presenters will be advocating for each of the different platforms. They'll be taking us through. Brent's going to take us through Adobe Connect. Sonia's going to be taking us through WebEx. And then Dan is going to be sharing some of the same features in Zoom. I think you're going to enjoy the session. Again, if you do have a specific question you would like us to answer during the course of our time together, we'll be using the Q&A panel for that. You'll find that by moving your cursor to the bottom center of your screen. Look for the circle with the three dots. That's the way that you'll open up the Q&A panel. Once you've got that open, type in your question. We'll get to as many of your questions as we can, and then for questions we don't get to, we'll be following up in a written format. Brent, I'd like to turn the presentation over to you, and thank you for getting us started.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome. It's good to be with you all. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedules to be with us today. I hope that you're all doing well and managing all the challenges that we are facing worldwide, as it's related to the COVID-19 pandemic. The intention of today's presentation is to provide you with an overview, some tips, some best practices on what you need to do in order to prepare for your first virtual training. With that being said, the agenda that you see here on the screen, we're going to be covering how to convert those face-to-face classroom activities into online interactive exercises. We'll provide you a demonstration of a few of the platforms and that best support the live virtual instructor-led training format. And then we'll also provide some best practices to help you prepare for that first virtual session. I just want to say that this is going to be an overview and not a training. So we're not going to get into too much detail, but we're hoping to give you a good perspective on each of the main platforms that we're going to be showcasing. If you guys have any questions, like we said earlier, make sure to drop those into the Q&A panel, and we'll do our best to answer those questions during the last 10 to 15 minutes of the presentation. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So in its simplest form, there are three types of online learning. So there's the synchronous online learning or live events. There's the asynchronous online learning, and then there's the blended learning. So synchronous online learning, in other words, those live virtual instructor-led trainings, is when the learners and the facilitator, they meet in real time on a training platform in order to learn and share with one another, to do activities together, interactive activities, online exercises, or practice new skills. This is the type of focus. This type of learning is the focus that we're going to be having during today's presentation. The asynchronous online learning is when the learner can learn on their own time and their own pace by completing some online exercises or activities on a platform. And then you've got the blended learning approach, where you have the hybrid of the live instructor-led training with the asynchronous online learning approach. In that format, you've got the learner who is typically learning on their own. Then they group, and then we come together in a group in real time on a training platform with a facilitator, and then you share, you ask questions, or you practice new skills with one another. When you're delivering the live virtual instructor-led training, you want to make sure that that learning experience is engaging, it's interactive, it's fun, it's informative, it's relevant, it's useful for the learners. Keep in mind that your learners are in front of their computers, just as we are right now, and for a period of time. And so they can get easily distracted by all the things happening around them, also the things that are on their computers, like their email, their instant messaging, their web browsing, incoming phone calls. So you want to keep the energy high, the engagement up by having them do various types of activities on that training platform every 2 to 3 minutes, and that will keep them from getting distracted. Let me get our slide changed over here. So in order to do this, like you might be thinking, how do I change over from the classroom that I'm doing now over to virtual learning? So you'll see on the screen, we got a couple of examples for you. So let's say you have a flip chart activity that you typically do in the classroom. Well, it's easy to convert. You can use, if your platform has a whiteboard option, you can do a whiteboard where you can annotate on it, you can take notes on it, just like you would in the classroom. If you have a table activity, the way you can do that in the virtual classroom is in a breakout. So you can send 2 people to a private room to talk with one another, to collaborate with one another, to practice new skills or practice new conversations. Or you can put them into groups of 3 or 4, or small to medium-sized groups. Workbook activities. So if you have them do things in their workbook, you can transition that over to the screen by having them annotate on the screen, typing on the screen, debrief questions to videos that they've just watched, or maybe making selections that they would have done in the workbook onto the screen. And we'll show you how you can do all of these things on these platforms in just a moment. And then finally, the group discussions. All right, so you can transition those into having discussions in the chat, or having discussions on the phone, or even doing the breakouts that way. All right, and then so the recommended platforms. Now, the purpose again of today's webinar, we're going to be mainly focusing on 3 different virtual training platforms: Adobe Connect, WebEx Training Center, and Zoom. So the reasons we've chosen those platforms over some of the other ones are that we have extensive experience using WebEx Training Center for virtual delivery of our live instructor-led training. And we've been using WebEx since 2000, so over 20 years of experience there. We're also currently using Adobe Connect as our preferred training platform, and we've been doing that for about the last 4 years or so. In a poll that we conducted a few weeks ago for a webinar, nearly 55% of the 500 people that were being polled, they said that they were currently using Zoom as their platform of choice for the virtual training that they're doing now. So we felt it was important to highlight Zoom. Seems to be a very popular program, especially now. And we also feel that those 3 platforms offer many of the features that we're about to discuss that create those engaging, interactive, fun virtual learning experiences on the live instructor-led training format. So there are other platforms that you might currently be using now for your training. So I'm going to go ahead and let Sonia share briefly a little bit about some of the other available platforms you might be asking about right now that are on the market, and why maybe those might not be the best option for supporting that live virtual instructor-led training format. So Sonia, over to you.
Hi there. So thank you so much, Brent. So the main, as you can see here, there's a list of other platforms. When I look at this list, what I see is not necessarily training platforms. I see meeting platforms. So when you think of Microsoft Teams and Google Hangouts, Skype, Click Meeting. Those are great interactive, well, maybe not interactive, but they're great tools for virtual meetings. When I see Skype or Google Hangouts or On24, those type of things, they are not interactive in the sense of a training room. So I think of you've got a meeting when you're using one of those, you don't have a training.
Yeah, I love that saying. I would completely agree with that. Thanks, Sonia. So let's explore now some of those common recommended features that are needed on a training platform, virtual training platform, in order to best support that live virtual instructor-led training that keeps, again, those virtual learning experiences engaging, interactive, and fun. So listed here on the screen are those several important features of a platform that we're going to be providing a demo of on each of those three platforms that we're going to be showcasing. So Sonia and Dan and I are going to be taking turns now, sharing our screens, showing you how to use each of those features that function on those platforms. So we're going to begin by covering the top 4 bulleted items there that you see on your screen. The attendee list, how that works, the group chat, the private chat function, the Q&A feature, and also how to share your desktop and share an application. So here are the 4 items we're going to showcase first on each of those platforms. You guys ready to get started? All right, here we go. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now of Adobe Connect. I have a room open, and I have a few of my colleagues that are in that room. There we go. So can you guys see the Adobe room?
Coming through perfectly, Brent.
Great. All right. So this is, I just wanted to highlight that this is not a standard format or layout that you might see when you first log into Adobe Connect. I've kind of formatted it in this way. So what I mean by that is, you've got the attendee pod up here in the right-hand corner, the group chat down here in the bottom right. Now you can move these around in Adobe Connect. So for an example, it might be the default that the group chat and the attendee list are over there on the left, and you've got the participant list over there on the right. So I just wanted to highlight, this isn't the standard format necessarily that you'll see, but I've moved things around, okay? So let me switch over to a theme that I have that will demonstrate those 4 areas that I shared earlier. So we're going to start with the attendee list in Adobe Connect. So there are 3 different types of views. So here's the attendee list. There are 3 different types of views. You've got the attendee view, which is a traditional view. In that view, you can see that there are 3 types of attendees. You've got the hosts, you have presenters, and you have participants. Now, you have the attendee view. This is the traditional view. When we do breakouts, the host can switch over to this breakout room view. And I'll go over breakouts here in a little bit later, and I'll share with you how this breakout view works. You can also have this attendee status view. And what that is, it'll give you an idea of, who is raising their hand right now, who's agreeing and disagreeing, who stepped away. So if I ask my colleagues right now in the room to raise their hand, we would see their names pop up here in this section, okay? There you go. Sydney raised her hand. You see that it popped up here. Now I can also go back to the attendee view, and I can see that she's raised her hand here. All right. So the other things I want to talk about quickly on the attendee list is engagement level. So there's like a green bar. There can be a red bar here, or also a yellow bar. So that'll roughly tell you engagement level. And I'll share with you later. There's a tool in Adobe Connect that tells you more information about engagement. And there's also a feature in Adobe Connect that also allows you to see who's actively speaking, which is really nice, because then you can call on people by name when after they've spoken. All right, so that's the attendee list feature in Adobe Connect. The group chat, so we can chat with everybody, like Sonia did there. I can also chat privately with somebody if I want. So I can go here to the pod options menu in the chat feature, and I can say, oh, I want to start a private chat with, a particular attendee. So maybe I want to start a private chat with Dan. I'll say, hello, Dan. Now you'll notice here then once I did that, a new tab opens up there in the attendee pod, and there he is. He sent me a private chat. All right. When I want to click back and say hi to everybody, I want to click back to this everyone tab there. So that's how the private chat feature works and the group chat in Adobe. A couple other things you can do. You can display these timestamps here if you wanted. You can also turn that off. You can change the text size and the text color of your chats. And you can also activate a beep that will notify you anytime you've received a chat. Going over here to the Q&A panel. So I'll ask one of my colleagues quickly to send me a question here in the Q&A panel. While they're doing that, you'll see here there's two different types of views. There's a presenter view, and then there's a participant view. So here's what the participant view looks like. You can assign any question. You can assign any question to certain individuals. So you can see Cindy's asked me what my favorite color is. So I can go ahead and assign that to myself since I'm the only presenter, and I will respond and send that off to Sydney. I can also export the log quickly and easily to my email if I want to. I can clear the messages, and I can even pop out the presenter view over to a different, pop that out of this pod here and have that separate if I wanted. And then last but not least, the share desktop feature and the share application feature in Adobe. So right now you can see how I'm sharing a document here. So this is a share pod, just like this is down here. And I'm sharing my PowerPoint. And I'll show you how you can annotate on that in a minute. But here is how I would share my desktop. So this is a share pod. You can do three things in a share pod. You can share your screen, you can share a document, a PDF, a PowerPoint, and you can also share a whiteboard. And by the way, you can make these pods as big or as small as you want. So I can shrink them, I can make them different sizes, and I can move them around the screen if I want. All right, so I talked long enough. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. Now that I've demoed those four things in Adobe Connect, I'm going to go ahead and turn the ball back over to Sonia to demonstrate how that all works in WebEx Training Center.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So I will go ahead and share my screen with you once I get that ball. Thank you. All right. So over here on the upper right, you'll see the participant panel there. You'll see there is what's called a panelist area. In the panelist area, that's where the presenters, the person with the ball, and other panelists can sit, as well as the host. So the host doesn't have to have the ball in there, but the person with the ball has the most control. Right underneath that, you see attendees. That's going to be where your participants are. You can see I've got a couple of logins here, and you can also track some engagement there by seeing those little exclamation points there. If you want to see what the percentage is, you can just click there and it'll show you that, hey, none of these people are attentive right now. Maybe you want to think about your training and how you have it designed. Okay, next on the chat down here, you can chat with all participants. You can chat with the host and the presenter. This is determined on how you have your settings set up. If you were to have your settings set up for participants to be able to chat with everyone, you would have all of these clicked. If you don't want them to be able to chat with other attendees, you just unclick that. So that's a great feature to have there. You cannot change your text color here. And when you get a private message, it flows in the chat there as well. When you're thinking about a Q&A, so I'm just going to collapse the chat there so this opens a little bit bigger. The Q&A is also a great feature in Adobe Connect, or I'm sorry, in WebEx. It's a great feature in Adobe Connect too. But the Q&A will allow you to ask a question. The question doesn't appear for anyone until it is answered. You can make these anonymous to the audience, but anybody above the attendee level, so in a panelist role, will be able to see the questions and they can assign them, or you can also show if they're answered or unanswered and which ones were assigned to you and that sort of thing there. Now, when it comes to sharing in WebEx, super easy to share. If you want to share a document, you can share it from here, from the file menu. You can also open poll questions. You can also open chat there. And those are previously created documents, by the way. If you want to share other types of files, you can share your desktop. You can share, and this will show you, how many monitors do you have, which one do you want to be on. You can share files, including videos, and you can also share applications as well, and other applications. These are things that may be running in the background on your system. And this is also where you share a whiteboard, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it back over to Dan.
Hi. Okay. Let me share my screen now. I've been very engaged in the chat, in the Q&A. Okay. Share my screen. Okay. So Zoom, it's the big rage right now. It's very popular. And there's a lot of reasons for that. One is I think the basic version is free. So I think that's gotten a lot of interest. And it's also very visual and very webcam centric. So I think a lot of people really like that and respond well to it. So, and there's also been a lot of concerns about Zoom with security. So I want to address that as well. They've taken a lot of steps recently, even daily almost, to address a lot of the changes. I think they kind of were hit unexpectedly with their own popularity and then what some people can and can't do with it. And I also think a lot of people were not necessarily prepared to do Zoom. There's a lot of beginners out there and a lot of people who don't know about all the functions and settings that they need to do. I think Zoom has taken steps to help prevent people from maybe not having the right settings turned on, and is also, even as I think this is brand new as of yesterday, there's a new security button that they've enabled. So they've done some things to help you like lock the meeting so people can't just join in. You can enable a waiting room, and then you can disable some of these options here. So they're trying to address it as best they can. But if you've got the right settings, Zoom can be very secure. So as far as what Zoom is capable of, it's a little bit different from WebEx and from Adobe, where you don't actually upload or share anything into Zoom. What you can do, though, is share your screen or share your desktop, which is pretty much all you can do. So what you can do and share in Zoom is dependent on what you can do and share on your computer. So which has some good and bad to it, but it's a little bit different from the other two platforms. It looks like I'm getting a little poor sound quality. I think might be my headset. Let me try that. Check my settings here.
And then everybody, while Dan is working on the settings, just a reminder, we're using both the chat feature and the Q&A feature here on the WebEx platform. If you have a specific question that you hope that Dan or Sonia or Brent covers during the course of today's presentation, we'd love to have you type that into the Q&A panel. The way that you'll find that is by moving your cursor down toward the bottom center of your screen. You'll see a circle with 3 dots on it. Click on that. That'll open up the option to open the Q&A panel. Once you've got it open, you can type in a question there, a specific question, and our participants will be working behind the scenes, our presenters, to answer your questions along the way. And then Dan will kind of come back to you now.
Okay. I turned my mic up a little bit. I don't know if that's any better.
Still a little bit crackly, but
it might be my internet connection. It's been a little bit shaky lately. I'll do my best though to persist. So so again, with Zoom, all you can do is share your screen, and then in order to see your list of participants, then you've got to enable this Manage Participants button here, and then you can see all the participants. And then also to chat, you have to enable chat. So again, it's different from the other platforms where you can control that for the participants, and for Adobe, you can move them anywhere on the screen. For WebEx, you can have it set up so that it's automatically showing. And for Zoom, kind of every participant has to enable that on their own. So it's a lot more reliant on the participants to get involved into getting their view set up. But then again, to share, again, I would just go to share screen, and then I would select the PowerPoint that I'd want to share, and I would share it. So again, now I can't see my list of participants and nor my chat. So you kind of have to manage and juggle a little bit in here. But again, you're able to share things in here. But I saw a question in the chat earlier about being able to upload to Zoom, and that's just not an option for you because they don't actually host or upload any content. So that's the basics of sharing and participants in Zoom.
Let's go ahead and we'll pass the ball back to Brent. And Brent, you can take us to the next group of features we'll be exploring.
All right, thanks, David. So the next features we're going to be highlighting are the on-screen annotation tools, the polling feature, and also whiteboards. So I'll go back to sharing my screen in Adobe Connect. Let me know when you can all see my screen.
We're seeing it now, Brent.
Perfect. Thanks, David. So we'll start with the on-screen animation or annotations. Now I have a PowerPoint slide loaded here, and I'll show you how we can annotate directly on that slide. So to activate the drawing tool or activate the annotation tools in Adobe, you just click on this draw button here. Once you load the PowerPoint, the draw button will be deactivated. When you click on that, you'll notice that the annotation toolbar shows up here in the left side of the vertically on the left side of the screen. Now I can also make this pod a little bit bigger here, so you can all see what's happening. There we go. So basically there's three things here that you can do on the slide. You can draw on it using the drawing tools. Now there's four types of drawing tools. You've got a marker, you have a highlighter, a pen, and a pencil. So I'll go ahead and select the marker here. And I am a horrible drawer on Adobe Connect, so I'll just draw a little smiley face using my marker. There we go. I can also, undo what I just did if I wanted to. All right. The next thing is typing on the screen. So you click on the capital T button, then you can click somewhere else on the screen, and you can type your name and let's say your favorite color. Then you want to click somewhere else for that text to show up for them to see on the screen. So that's how you can type on the screen. You can also move around your annotations by clicking on this top button here, the selector arrow, and then you can click on what you've typed and you can kind of drag that to a different part of the screen. That way, some people type over each other. If you have, 20 people in the room and people type over each other, you or them can move your text to a different part of the screen or anything really that you type or do on the screen. And then last but not least, there's the shape tool. So below the text tool is this rectangle. If you click on that, you get all these shapes that you can draw on the screen. You've got squares, you can do circles, you can do arrows, all right? You can do check marks. We use the check mark tool a lot to make a selection on a screen. And then you can also change the shapes, or I'm sorry, the color of any of your annotations here by choosing the color palette. You can also, when you select text, you can also change the font and the size of your text as well. So that is the drawing tools or the annotation tools in Adobe Connect. Down here in the poll, and I'll have my colleagues here as soon as I open up the poll, make a selection here. But I just wanted to show you before I open to the poll that here's my question that I typed here in this area. I'm going to ask the group what their favorite training platform is. You can select either to have them only select one answer, multiple choice, multiple answers, or provide a short answer. So I selected multiple choice. They're going to have one choice. I'm going to click it, open the poll. We're going to see them select their answers here in a minute. There we go. So we got a couple of votes for Adobe Connect. I'm going to go ahead and click the box for broadcast results. So once I close the poll, they're going to see those results. So I'm going to end the poll, and now they're allowed to see these results here. So pretty easy to do that. You can edit the poll if you want. You can reopen it. You can create a new poll. The way that you create polls is it's its own pod. So you go up here to the pods and you add a new poll. All right. And then finally, here's the whiteboard. It pretty much operates the same way as, you know, a PowerPoint would be if you added that as a share pod. Remember, you can add a PowerPoint, you can add a whiteboard in a share pod. So it's the same way. You've got a whiteboard here, and you can draw on the screen, you can type on it, and you can put different shapes on the whiteboard. So if you use a whiteboard in a breakout, which I'll demonstrate a little bit later, you can also pull these whiteboards, you can pull note pods, you can pull most anything from a breakout into the main room, and I'll show how you can do that. All right, so I'm going to turn things back over to Sonia to demonstrate how to do all that in WebEx now, WebEx Training Center.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right, I'll go ahead and share. Okay, so when we are using a whiteboard, you just go up to the share menu here, and you choose a whiteboard. So I'll talk to you about the whiteboard and the annotation tools at the same time, just because it's kind of how it works anyway in this environment. So we've got the whiteboard up now. You can see it's right there. You can change the name of your whiteboard if you want to something else. And the wonderful thing about WebEx is that it is super easy for participants to understand how to use. You can click and put your arrow on, you can type some text. Oh, look at that, mine is yellow. So you always want to tell your participants to change their text color by using this little menu here. It will not change the color of your arrow, just your text. And then you can see that there. You've also got a line tool, which just allows you to draw a line, and the rectangle toolbox there as well. And just a few features here, very simplistic, but so easy to understand. You can put little X's in or big X's, and same with the check marks. Mostly we use the check mark so that, you know, we can identify where people agree with something or something means something to them. You can also draw in this environment. You know, I could draw my name on the board if I wanted to. And as I showed before, you can share just about any color there. You can erase everything, so you can clear everyone's annotations, or you can clear just yours. You can clear everyone's pointers, or you can clear just yours. The pointers, sorry, I forgot to talk about that. The pointers in WebEx, all participants can have a pointer. It will be a unique color, but there are only I think it's 16 colors to choose from. And so that's a really cool feature about the annotation tools there. So next, let me talk to you about polling. So I'm going to put this back over on my my presentation there. So if you see the poll here over in the lower right, you can set this poll up 3 different ways: multiple choice, multiple answer, or short answer. The interesting thing about short answer is that only the participants who answer with a short answer can see that answer during the session. It's not until toward the end or at the end where you can download those results, and then you can see the individual answers, even if you click this record individual responses. So when we open this poll, you would just click open. You would allow your participants to go ahead and start to answer there. So Dan, if you can answer the poll there. Perfect. And then you can just click close the poll. A quick note about closing the poll: if all of your participants have not answered, it will give you an additional 20 seconds to answer. All right, I think I'm going to turn it back over to Dan. Thank you.
Okay, I might still be having some audio issues. I'm kind of hearing some static now too, so I'll do my best, but let me know. So in Zoom, annotations, pollings, and whiteboards work just about the same. For annotations, though, there's one little slight difference, whereas you don't actually see a default annotation on the main screen until you get to either sharing a screen or opening up a whiteboard. So when I go and share like this PowerPoint here, you can now see that I've got this annotate button that pops up, and the participants would need to click on that as well to open up their annotation tools. Now they're able to draw on the screen, and just want to share just one of our tips too, that when we do some of our presentations, this is one example of when we would use an annotation. So when you're doing trustworthy behaviors versus untrustworthy, they can go and annotate, click on text, and then maybe share a couple of examples of what some of those behaviors might be. So this is one way that we kind of recommend interacting and working with annotations. Another example would be, and this is one way that we do polls. Instead of actually creating a poll, you can actually just build that right into the PowerPoint. So that way you don't have to worry about creating the poll ahead of time or working with the polling function of your platform. Instead, you can just come in here on the slide and just kind of get those marked off on the screen. So, but one difference with Zoom versus Adobe Connect or WebEx is that Zoom doesn't know when you've turned your slide. So if I go to the next slide, all those annotations are still going to be there. So what you want to do when you're working within Zoom is anytime you're going to do any kind of annotation or text on your screen, you're going to want to clear that before you go to the next slide. So just something that you'll have to actively do when you're working in Zoom, if you're going to be doing annotations and having people interact on the screen, is being ready to clear that as soon as you're ready to go to the next slide. So when you're working with polls, one thing you can do, I'm going to stop sharing here, is you can create your polls ahead of time, or you can also create them on the fly, but I always recommend doing them ahead of time. So here's one poll that I created just for this, and then you can just go in here and launch the poll. And I'll have Brent or Sonia. And I saw a question come up, and no, this is not a free Zoom account. This is the pro account. The free is not really conducive for virtual classroom because you can only have, I think, a maximum of 10 people and only for 40 minutes at a time. So it doesn't really work for us. So I'm going to go ahead and end the poll, and then you can also then share the results. So polling is actually works pretty well, and that's one of the things, pretty much the only thing you can do ahead of time in Zoom is polls. And then lastly, whiteboards. Whiteboards are just very similar to the share screen. So you click on share screen and then create a whiteboard. And also whiteboards you can create in breakout rooms, but we'll go over that a little bit later. But the great thing that I like about whiteboards at Zoom is whenever you have a whiteboard and you're sharing and annotating in it, when you end the session, it'll automatically save that whiteboard to your computer, so you can have that for later. So that's one of the good things I like about whiteboards in Zoom. So with that, I'm going to send it back over to Brent.
Thanks, Dan. All right, so coming up next, we're going to highlight how to play videos in those platforms, and also show you how to share webcams as well. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to my Adobe room. Let me know when you can all see the Adobe session. You good?
You're back on. Looks
great.
Good.
All right, so I've got two of those pods preloaded here. Here's the video pod down here. Here's a webcam pod. Now to share a video, you would just open up a new share pod, okay? Then you would share a document in that pod, and then you would pull from, and you have these videos hopefully preloaded into Adobe Connect, so I can show you kind of what that looks like. I'm using my share pod there for the video currently, so you can see here. I'm going to go to share content, and let's see, I'm in SL2 program. And up here, you can see I've got my videos preloaded. So that's how I would select the video that I want to play in this particular pod. Now I've got one preloaded here, so let me just show you how that works. I'm going to make this nice and big, so participants have a good view. I'm going to go ahead and click play, and it just plays. All right. And again, you can shrink that down if you want. Move it around, and you can see we have the videos that are playing with the captions at the bottom. Now, you guys aren't hearing this right now because I'm sharing my screen and my audio through WebEx Training Center, but my colleagues, if they were getting audio through Adobe Connect, they'd be able to hear the video as well. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pause that, shrink that down, and over here to the webcam. So webcams are activated just by simply activating up here next to the webcam button. Now, I'm not going to go ahead and turn on my webcam here in Adobe Connect because I don't want to create some problem in the space-time continuum because I'm already sharing my webcam with you in WebEx Training Center. But you can see here, you've got a couple of different views in this pod. You have the grid view, so kind of like the Brady Bunch view, where you have people in columns and rows that are being shown. You have also the film strip view, so it'll highlight the person that is talking, and then everybody else is at the bottom. I think that's about it. Sonia, when I'm going to take you back to WebEx now, Sonia and Dan, you guys have anything to add to what I just shared?
Nope, I'm good. Oh, the start my webcam. Did you mention that?
Oh, the preview?
Yes. So that's one really nice thing about Adobe Connect is that you can click your webcam and then it comes up for you in a preview state. And then you can click Start My Webcam when you're ready. The other really nice feature is that you can freeze your image in Adobe Connect. So if you just wanted your picture there but didn't want to be on video the entire time, that's also a great tip to have.
All right, you got the ball, Sonia.
Oh, perfect. Wonderful. So let me go back to sharing my screen over here. And so you'll see here on the platform that you can share. Remember, I told you I'd talk to you later about file including video. So we can share a file including a video. Let me pop that up for you. And I'll bring one in here if I can find it. Where did it go? Ah, there it is. Okay. So you see the file is right here. Now, if it takes a second to buffer, and you can preload so that they buffer ahead of time versus waiting, like I just did. I wanted you to see that, where you went on the menu. So if I click play here, you will be able to hear the sound because in WebEx, video sound comes through the computer, not through the headset. So you'll need to make sure your participants either, if you're on VoIP, which is this headset, it's no problem. If you're on a telephone solution, you would need to have them turn their computer sound on so that they could hear it. Someone asked a question earlier about playing embedded videos. You cannot play embedded videos in Adobe Connect. And let's see. Oh, here's a really important thing about videos and sharing. Do not use the multimedia option. The multimedia option gives the participant control of the video and the recording or whatever it is, and you can't turn it off. Sometimes even the participant can't turn it off. So good tip there for you. I'll just play this video real quick. Sound will come through the headset, by the way. So it'll take a few seconds because he has a little intro. Just so I wanted you to see that so that, it comes up nicely for you there. And it's a good image, good resolution that you see there as well. So now let's talk about video. So there's a couple of different, or webcam, sorry. Platforms do consider video, they do call video and webcam the same thing. And the reason is because webcam is, the system is actually streaming the video of you into the room. So it is considered a video in all platforms. So there's a couple of different ways. There's a button here that you can choose. There's also this little icon up in the upper right hand corner over here, the little settings icon. If you click that, you can choose which webcam you want to use. I'm going to choose this one. And so you'll see me now, or it says I'm Dan, but I'm not really Dan, but you'll see me now on, sorry, that takes just a second. It says I'm about to go live. And then there it puts you in the corner there. You can pin the presenter talking here. If I had more people on cam, I would have more options here, but I don't. I've just got one person on cam. So you can lock the display so that only your presenter is the person talking. If other people are talking, the video or the webcam won't go off of the presenter talking. Perfect. I think that's it for me there. So I'll hand it over to Dan.
Okay, so videos, and I know videos are a very popular subject. So with videos in Zoom, um, it's a little misleading because it says it's possible, but in my experience, it has not been the best experience for the participants. So to share a video in Zoom, you would need to have the video file ready to go, and then just like with the other files that you're sharing your screen. So I would click on share, and then I would go navigate to the video. Now, what you see down here is you've got these two options where there is a share computer sound, which will share the audio from the video. And then you've also got this optimized screen sharing for the video clip. Now that will just basically try to stream the video in the best possible way. But again, it's a little misleading because it doesn't work that great. So when you go to share, you would just have the video file and you would click play. Now you as the presenter would see and hear the video just fine, but the participants, depending on their internet connection, the video could look a little bit staticky. They might hear the audio just fine through their computer speakers or their headset, but the video may not match up directly depending on their internet connection. So again, while it technically works, it's not the best experience that I've come across. But so you can see it, and if possible, we always recommend having the closed caption version of a video so people can at least read along, if nothing else. So that's kind of the basics for doing a video in here, and I see questions in there about the sound. And again, to do sound in Zoom when you're sharing a video is you've got to click these options down here for share your computer sound, because that will share whatever's on sound is on your computer out to the participants. For webcams, I'm going to go and say I'm hoping everyone knows about Zoom and webcams. It's kind of what they're known for is the webcam interface. I'm going to start my video in here so you can see. I'm sorry, my webcam's over here, but my monitor's over here that has the Zoom. But Zoom has a great interface for webcams for participants, and you can have a lot of people on here, and it manages the group of webcams very, very well. So that's one thing I think Zoom does a superior job of, is having a webcam interface. All right, back to you, Brent.
Thanks, Dan. Okay, everybody. So we're almost done previewing some of these features here in the platform. Coming up next, we're going to show how you can transfer files to participants, and then the breakouts, which I'm sure a lot of you have been wondering about. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again in Adobe Connect. Tell me when you can see that.
Looking good.
Excellent. So real quick, here's how you file share in Adobe Connect. Now I got an example here on the screen for you. This is how you open that. So up here in the pods again, it's the file share pod. All right. So I can add a new file share if I want. This is the one that I have open already that I provided an example of. So let's say if I want to share, this session evaluation with people to download and complete, or maybe the agenda of today's session, or handouts, or the workbook. All right. So how you upload the file. So you just click on the upload button, and either if those materials are already uploaded into Adobe, you can select it there. But if you want to look for it in your computer, you can go ahead and select the browse my computer button, find that file, and then go ahead and upload it. Once it's been uploaded, the way you download it is you click on the file that you want to download, you click on the downloads button, it'll open up my web browser here, and then you go ahead and click on the download button, and then down here it will download that file, and you just go ahead and click on it and it'll open it. So that is the file share option in Adobe Connect. The other thing are the breakouts. So let me show you how you do breakouts in Adobe. Remember, it's in the attendees pod where you want to switch the view to the breakout room view. And this is behind the scenes. This is what the producer or the host or the facilitator would do. They click on the breakout room view. I don't believe the participants have that view. All right, so then now you can see in this room here that I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. There we go. You can see in this room that there are 10 breakouts currently created. Now, if I want to create a new breakout, it's just a click of a button here. Just create a new breakout. You see I've added another breakout. If I want these people to be evenly distributed in the breakouts, I can go ahead and click on this button here, and it'll drop each of them into their own breakout, okay? And then it'll start putting, once we get up to 12, it'll start putting the second person in breakout 1. I can also manually put people into rooms. So if I want, Dan and Amy to be together, and I want Sonia and Cindy to be together, I can manually adjust them. Here's how I start the breakouts. I just click the button. Now we're in a breakout, okay? So my colleagues are in a breakout room. In a moment, I'll show you how I can move myself to the breakout room. I can send a broadcast message, all right? So I can let them know, hey everybody, we've got 5 minutes left, all right? 5 minutes left. There we go. And then when I click that, they're going to see that message in their own breakout. Now let me show you how I can move myself to a breakout. I'm going to click on my name. I'm going to go ahead and select breakout 1, and I'm going to put myself into this breakout. Now you can see I'm in the room with Amy and Dan. And what I have built into this room is a whiteboard. All right, so I've already drawn on a whiteboard here as an example. I also have a notes pod here down here as well. So, you can have them draw on a whiteboard, you can have them type on notes, you can show the PowerPoint if you want, and I'll show you how you can pull in these whiteboards and these notes into the main room once I end breakout. So let me take myself to breakout room 3, show you how I've arranged this room here. So I'm in the room with Sydney and Sonia now, and there you go. It's just a kind of a standard view. Let's say that what they're seeing on the screen would be the breakout instructions. And now you can see Sydney's typed me a message in the breakout pod. So this is only the chat for this breakout room, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and end breakouts now, taking us all back to the main Adobe room. All right, now if I click back onto this attendee view, you can see all the attendees are back in the room. Now here's how I can pull in those whiteboards and that note pod from breakout room 1. What I just did is I opened up this hidden view here. This is actually the presenter only area. So this would be the area that either the host or the presenters can see behind the scenes. It's kind of like the behind the magic curtain of the Wizard of Oz. So this is only what I can see as a host or presenter. What participants see is only what's here to the left of this black vertical toolbar. So watch, this is how I pull in whiteboards and no pods or whatever in those breakouts. I'm going to go here to pods, breakout pods. I want to pull in that whiteboard and that notes pod from breakout room 1. I'm going to pull the whiteboard first. It drops it into my presenter only area. I can click and drag that into the main area, and now they're seeing that in their Adobe window. Here's how I pull out that notes pod. Same thing. Their notes pod will drop in here in the presenter only area. I can bring that in here, and again, I can make that as big or as small as I want to. So that in a nutshell is the breakouts in Adobe Connect. So as I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Sonia or Dan, if there's anything you want to add, please do.
I was just going to add about the random versus assigned breakout rooms.
Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
No, it's just showing how that works in there. When you randomly you can click that random button.
Right. Yeah, you can automatically assign them to the room, evenly distribute, or you can manually do it if you want as well. Yep. All right, Sonia, passing the ball over to you.
Perfect. Wonderful. Okay. So transferring files. In transferring files in WebEx, you would go up to your file menu, click transfer, and then you can click, oh wait, I'm on the wrong screen. 1 second. Nope, I'm on the right one. I don't know why that popped up. So you would click file transfer, and It's not giving me the, sorry about this. So I'm just going to make that person leave, I guess. So you click share file, and then I'm just going to go to my desktop because I have a silly little picture here that I'll share, and you can open that. Now, when you share files here in WebEx, you cannot click multiple files at one time. You have to click them individually, but you can have a list here. Once you have your list here and you're ready to share this with, it's already shareable with the participants, they can click download quite easily here. Just click download. It'll download directly to their computer. And you can tell over here in the lower right-hand corner how many participants have downloaded. It won't tell you who downloaded it, but it will show you how many participants have. One of the features that WebEx did change previously, if you changed the presenter, if you gave the ball to someone else, the file transfer box would go away, and it no longer does. So it does stay open the entire time. All right, and let me go to breakouts. So for breakouts, there are a couple of different ways that you can open breakouts. So you can do it from the menu here, and you can close it. Well, I have the panel open, but you can't see it right now. You can open or close the breakout panel, or you can choose it from your menu over here in the upper right-hand corner. So I would just choose it there. So I wanted to make my breakout assignment, which I've already done. And here in WebEx, you add and remove your participants by clicking the participant name, then clicking the breakout room name, and then clicking the arrow. So participant name, session or breakout session, and then arrow. If you take nothing else away from me today about breakouts in WebEx, this is the most important thing. Make sure you click that apply to all above options in this session, and then click let others join the breakout without an invitation. That's the most important thing you can do in WebEx for breakouts. Then you just click OK. To start a breakout, important thing for you to know about breakouts in WebEx, you cannot preload any content. So if you want an assignment, you either send it to your participants ahead of time, or you and your producer really tag team it and get it going that way. Putting the text or putting the document into the room while you're working, while the breakouts have started. You can't preload, but you can share the content afterward. Now, since so this is a little message that says you've been assigned. So this is how breakouts work. It's kind of wonky in WebEx. You do have to click yes, that you will take the assignment, and then you go into the breakout room. Now you see in the breakout room, they could share a whiteboard here. And if we type something onto the board, I'm just going to change my text color so it shows up. And I'll use the little draw tool and just draw a big blue heart there. And I'm going to change, you can change this breakout name, which is a feature I like. I just send my producer through the breakouts and then just make sure that they put breakout 2 or what have you on the slide there. So I want to end my breakout now. Oh, darn, I was hoping I would have a participant in here, but I kicked her out. All right, so we'll end breakouts here. But let me show you the thing that I wanted to show you was if there were, let me just increase the size of this. If there were a participant who got kicked out of their room, a little button down here in the lower right will appear that says join. You could have them go and click their breakout session name and then click join there. Or you could promote them to a panelist level if you didn't click those options, but you don't want to do that. Trust me, you don't want to do that. So how do you share content? So breakout content is shared through the breakout menu only. So you just go here and you share breakout content. And this will give you a list. Now what happens is this person would have to click a box, and you'll see the message pop up on my screen. So they have to click the box to the left, and then they share. And you see it's come up right here in my field there, or in a tab there. And that's what I have for breakouts. turning it back over to you, Dan.
Thank you, Sonia. Okay, so back to my pal Zoom. So Zoom is, a lot of people have wondered about, can you do breakouts in Zoom? And what about sharing files? So the sharing files, that answer has changed in the last week a couple of times. That was one of the security features that they had disabled, was being able to share a file and being able to push that out. So that's something that they've changed. They turned it off for a little while, but I think they're feeling good about it now, so they've re-enabled it again. So if you wanted to share a file like a workbook or a handout or something like that, you've got this share a file option down here. So you just go click here, select the file that you would want, and then it would be able to share it with everyone who attended. So it's pretty straightforward. It's one of those things that you have to enable in your settings prior to the session, but you can share a file through Zoom. For breakouts, again, that is something we didn't really talk about roles in Zoom before. So I'm in here as a host, and I can also have a co-host, so I can make him a co-host. But it's only the host, the person who started the meeting, that is the one that can create polls and breakouts in Zoom. So me as the host, I can create a breakout. So I'm going to go and start some breakout rooms. So again, you've got kind of the same options here. You can create as many rooms as you want. I think up to 50 is what Zoom allows, so quite a few. And then you can have it automatically assign people to the rooms, or you can manually send them to the rooms. So I'm going to manually assign the rooms here. So I can go to breakout room 1. I can rename it if I want to, and assign, let's see, I'm going to put Brent in room 1. I'm going to put Sonia in room 2. What's also nice about Zoom is some of the other options that they have. So again, you can move them all automatically, have them automatically close after a certain amount of time, so you're not having to manage your timing on your own. I also really like that they have a countdown feature, so you can set this to, with some of the other platforms for WebEx and Adobe, you would have to kind of maybe send out a message or have it kind of keep track of the timing. But I like that I can have a 60-second timer. So when I'm ready to close the breakout, I can give everyone a countdown to let them know that the time is going to be ending soon. And also with Zoom, when you're scheduling the meeting, you can set up a lot of these options in advance of having it either automatically assign the breakouts and all that. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the breakouts. Now, when you're in a breakout, I'm going to go into this breakout here and join Brent. Oops, I'm going to join them. So I'm now in a breakout room. So what we can do in a breakout room, and this is what the participants can do, is they are allowed to, if you give them permission, they can start a share screen. So I can have Brent, he can come in here, click on the share screen, and start a whiteboard. So each of the participants are in a breakout are able to start sharing a whiteboard. So what we like to do is kind of assign a kind of a breakout room captain who would be in charge of starting the whiteboard. So Brent is doing that for us, and then do the annotations up here. Oops. And then start writing on the screen. And then what we can do is have the kind of room captain save this whiteboard to their own computer right when they're getting ready to close. So again, that's when that timer comes in handy of giving the countdown, letting them know that they're going to want to save that whiteboard before the time runs out. And then what we would do is I'm going to leave this breakout room here, return to the main session. And then I kind of have to reconfigure my room again. And then I'm going to close the breakouts. So I've got the 60-second timer here. But again, so what you can do is have everyone come back in, and then they would need to share that file with you if you wanted to share that with the rest of the group. So it's not the best experience, but it's possible. So with breakouts, they're able to see each other with the webcams, and they're able to share screens and do whiteboards. So there's a lot that you can do, but some of the kind of the sharing of what happens in the breakouts is doesn't feel as smooth, but it is. There's ways you can work around it. So I'll send it back to Brent.
All right, thanks, Dan. Sorry, trying to get myself off of mute there. All right, so we're almost done. We have a few more features that we'll quickly highlight on these platforms. Things like, how do you track, participation? We have some things called the feedback or status tools. We'll talk briefly about recordings, and then I'll share with you some apps that you can download from Adobe Connect and use in your training rooms. So quickly sharing my Adobe room with you one more time. And let me switch over to a new layout here, and I'll show you also all the different things here. So I'll start with the with a notes pod really quick. So again, here's a notes pod, so you can drop this into a breakout. You can just have people typing on that notes pod there directly in the main room if you want. Attention tracking. All right, so here's how you can track, engagement if you want. Directing your attention to, let me make this smaller. Let me actually just minimize that. So up here in the attendees pod, I mentioned these, green, yellow, and red bars. This generally tells you, within the last minute or so, how engaged they've been in the room. If I kind of peek into my behind the curtain thing, you've got this engagement dashboard. All right, so this will briefly tell you, an engagement level of the group based on the things that they're doing. It also puts down here, since I did a Q&A pod and a poll here, how many of the people responded to that. All right, so just kind of a little engagement thing. I'll just tell you the what I do the most to track engagement. I will ask the producer to help me keep track every 10 minutes in the chat, in our private chat. Who have we not heard from, either in the chat, on the phone, or typing on the screen, and then I'll try to draw out that person more in the next 10 minutes. So I use the producer for that to help me keep track of engagement. So recordings, the way you do recordings here is you just click on the record meeting here. You can record in the cloud, or you can record directly to your computer if you like. And then finally, the feedback or status tools are up here in Adobe. So you can raise your hand, all right, and that'll pop up here in the attendee pod. You can do a green check or red X if you agree or disagree with something. You can step away, showing that you're not at your computer. You can, and then you have some of these other options here as well. All right, and any of these buttons that you click here will show up here in the attendee pod, just like Sydney did. All right, the ones that you are up here will stay until I clear the status. The ones that you select here will automatically disappear after about 10 seconds. And then finally, the last thing I'll say about Adobe Connect is you can download from adobeconnect.com/apps some apps to use. So I've given you some examples of, here's a music app so that you can play during, as people are logging in if you like, or during breaks. So that's an app, a music app. Here's a timer app. So you can start this timer in the room during breaks, or you can drop this timer into breakout rooms to let them know how much time they have left. Here's a randomizer app. So I can select, who I want to call on, and it'll automatically pick a person here that you want to call on for a certain activity. So it looks like Amy was the lucky person there. And then you can do just a fun, rock, paper, scissors game here if you want to keep the group engaged before you get started. The one thing because there were a lot of Q&A questions about, how can I share a YouTube video? This is how you can do that in Adobe Connect. So if I click on this, I preloaded this link here in this web links pod. So that is right here, and it's a web links pod. And let's say I want to push this YouTube video out to the participants in the room. I click the Browse To button. It'll automatically send their browser to that video that I want them to watch on YouTube. And in this case, it's Ken Blanchard. All right, sharing a little bit about leadership as a partnership. All right, So that is how you can do all those things in Adobe Connect. I'll turn it over to Sonia now to share a little bit about some of the extra features in WebEx.
Oh, good gosh golly, this is where the bad news starts. There are no apps in WebEx. So there is nothing extra that you can add in here like you can on Adobe Connect. However, there are attention tracking tools, and I'll show those to you over here. You see there's this little exclamation point. I talked about this a little bit earlier. There's an exclamation point here, and you can track how much attentiveness folks are showing you there. Now, what does it mean to be attentive? I've answered this question a few times in the chat, but what it means to be attentive is to be clicked onto the environment. It does not track how much you chat. It does not track how many times you do a click or any of that sort of thing. I did want to talk quickly about the feedback tools because I think I missed that earlier. Participants can use several feedback tools here. The green check, the red X. They can also use some emoticons as well. And those are available to participants and need to be enabled. For recording in Adobe Connect or in WebEx, I'm sorry, I keep saying Adobe Connect. For recording in WebEx, you just go here and you can record on this computer, record on the server. I recommend recording on the server because if you record on the computer, it will record every single click you make. So if you're doing this, it's going to show up on your recording. If you flip to a chat or your email, it's going to show up on the recording. So make sure that you are recording to server, and then also record audio from computer. For instance, if you're showing a video, you want that audio to be played because remember, video audio comes through the computer sound in WebEx. All right, I'm going to hand it back over to, let me make sure first that I covered everything there that I wanted to cover with that. Yep, there we go. I'm going to hand it back over to you, Dan.
Okay. So just like with WebEx, Zoom doesn't have any kind of applications or anything because, again, we're not really uploading anything. It's pretty much what you have on your computer is what you can share. So there's not really any kind of apps for that. For attention tracking, they used to have some attention tracking, but that was one of the features that they've removed recently with regards to security. So there isn't really kind of any attention tracking for participants in here. But for feedback tools, we've got a few options here. We've got the check, and we have the no, and we can go slower, faster. So there's other ways you can kind of interact and get feedback from the participants who are in the room. As far as recording, you can record sessions for Zoom. A couple of things to keep in mind is there's settings, it always comes back to settings. There's a lot of settings for Zoom that you'll want to review prior to recording your meeting. So you can record directly to your computer, or you can also record to a cloud for playback later. There's some things you'll want to keep in mind, and we'll talk about that in a minute about how much file size you have, but you can record and you can play it back for later use. But just keep in mind about how much space you have in your account, because that's one of the things where Zoom is not as low cost as it may seem, especially if you're going to be recording a lot of sessions. I think you're still muted, Brent.
All right, thanks, Dan. So now that we've shared some of the features of these platforms and how they work, we created a side-by-side comparison chart. Which platform offers certain features, which of them don't, and which of them do to a certain extent. Now, we're going to be sharing a copy of this presentation after today's webinar with you that will have this chart on it, but I would strongly encourage you to do your own research and learn more about that platform that you are currently using or the one that you're interested in that best meets your needs and your budget. So technology isn't always our friend, and but a producer can help you when things go wrong, and especially you, your learners, and the platform. So we highly recommend a producer that can support your virtual sessions. It's really a common standard and practice in the industry. And having a producer will allow you as the facilitator to focus on the content and the learners and to keep the things moving. And the producer can focus on, the technology side of things. So I'm going to turn over to Sonia briefly to share with you, how can a producer help support the session, support you as a facilitator, and the participants, and to help ensure that the session runs smoothly on the back end. So Sonia, you want to share a little bit about that?
Yes, I do. Thank you so much, Brent. The producer really, I mean, it's just such a key role in this environment. They can help you welcome participants. They can help instruct you and your learners on how to use the features of the learning platform. They partner with the facilitator in the learning environment. They can set up and manage breakouts for you, retrieving breakout content for you, debriefing activities. They can track attendance for you and participant engagement like Brent was talking about before. Has everybody in this room clicked yes? Are they all participating? They can also load materials and create polls for you or edit polls for you in most platforms. It gets kind of wonky in Zoom, and we hopefully we'll get to answer that question a little bit later. And they can also re-engage enforcement or engagement through instructive participation. And what I mean by that is, so maybe Brent is my facilitator and he's asked a question, and I will retype that question as the producer into the chat. And so that the participants not only see or hear the question, but they also have a visual representation of that question as well. I know we are getting close to end time here, and I am excited to dig into the Q&A. So I'm going to hand it back over.
All right. Thanks, Sonia. So basically to wrap things up, that, so as you think about pivoting to from the classroom facilitation over to virtual, just remember that your skills in the classroom are not enough to be successful in the virtual classroom, and they can be a potential liability for you. So you need to learn the platform, get comfortable with its features and how to use them, learn the virtual training design and the content so that you're comfortable in what you're going to be delivering, develop your skills as a virtual facilitator, and then practice as much as possible. So we're going to turn things over to Dave to kind of moderate some of the questions that have been coming in that we can answer for you with the remaining time that we have. I also just want to kind of get your thoughts in the chat as well, while Dave is queuing up some of the questions here. So, what did you guys like the most out of today's presentation? What was a highlight for you as well? So if you could share some of those things in the chat, we'd appreciate that in addition to the questions that you have. So Dave, what questions have we got that we can answer for the group?
Well, we've gotten a lot of questions, that's for sure. And thank you all for the wonderful questions that you've been asking throughout the presentation. We had over 200 questions in the Q&A panel. And I want to make sure that if you have a question you wanted to make sure that was covered in today's presentation, we're going to finish off by talking about a couple of high overview things. But please do go ahead and add your question into the Q&A panel. We're going to be keeping the transcript. We're going to be following up on all the questions that have been answered and giving that to you as a follow-up piece. So I want to make sure that if there's a question that you wanted to make sure was included in that follow-up, go ahead and use the Q&A panel to ask that question. The biggest question I think Brent, Sonia, and Dan that came in is people have appreciated seeing the kind of side-by-side comparison of the three different platforms, but they have some questions. Given the fact that the three of you have got experience with all three of these platforms, people want to know, what are your suggestions? So the first question is, maybe I'll go, Dan, to you first. What's the best platform, and I know you've got a fun answer to this, that you would suggest that people first consider? Dan?
Sure, yes. So my answer for this is what is the best platform is it's the platform that you have. And the reason that is because it's already available, and there's going to be people in your organization who are going to know how to use it and help you get started with it. And the other thing too is you might not have a big of a learning curve with your participants who are going to be joining, so that they can, they're not having to learn a whole new technology. It's something they might be using already. So I mean, we're showing you a few different options out there and why we kind of like each one of them. But again, it's the platform that you have, and just make it work. That's my version of the best answer.
Great, thank you, Dan. Sonia, a question came in addition to the 3 platforms that we've covered today, Zoom, WebEx, and Adobe Connect. People have asked about a couple of other platforms, and if there were 1 or 2 other platforms that you think would be good for exploring, what would be maybe 2 additional ones in addition to these big 3?
Sure. Let me make sure. Yeah, I'm unmuted. Super. For me, last night I gave 2, and this overnight I thought about it and I changed my mind on one of them. So the first one is GoToTraining. So GoToTraining is a good platform as well. It has all of these same features, but it's very busy to look at. There's no, this room is very clean. You can tell where lines are. It's beautiful. But GoToTraining is a very visually busy platform. Last night I said Microsoft Teams would be my second choice, but after I thought about it last night, I changed my mind, and I would go with Sabacentra. Sabacentra is also an LMS, so it can hold and house documents as well and record training and that sort of thing, but it does all the same features of a virtual platform and has some really nice features. Again, it is a visually busy platform as well. These 3 platforms are pretty clean, and so I'll just stick with that for now. So I'm going to say Microsoft, or I'm going to say Sabacentra and GoToTraining.
Great. Thank you, Sonia, for that. Brent, I'm going to ask your help with passing the ball over to me, and then I've got a question for you while you're doing that. In terms of evaluating these 3 platforms and which one is the best, I think there's a couple of different criteria. The people have asked, if you're brand new to using a virtual platform, which one would you suggest? And then people also would like to know which of the 3 platforms is the most expensive. And then finally, if you were going to pick a platform for the best overall, what would it be? So which of those questions would you like to tackle first?
I will tackle the first question about, maybe the easiest platform if you're a beginner, and then I'll have Sonia talk about the costs, and then I'll share, my recommendation out of the 3. So the platform that I feel is the simplest maybe to use to get you started, I would probably choose Zoom out of the 3 platforms. And, the reason for it, it's just, it's easy to use both on the facilitator side and on the participant side. You can get started pretty quickly on that. So Sonia, I'll ask you, what your thoughts are about that, but then also to quickly share, a little bit about the costs. And then as far as the platform goes, that my recommendation would be would be Adobe Connect, because I think that it does what we covered, the features. I think it covers those the best. It's a pretty well-rounded platform, virtual training platform for the type of training that we're talking about. Sonia, over to you.
Thank you. So I'm going to agree with you pretty much on all fronts. Zoom is the best platform for new users. And someone asked the question in the Q&A, why has Zoom become so popular? Because it's super easy to use. It is really easy for your learners to use. It's a little bit more complex on the back end regarding settings and that sort of thing. But for you just to, share a video or share a presentation, Zoom, and attempt to do a training there, Zoom is the way to go if you are a novice. My favorite platform, personal, is Adobe Connect. You can design. There's so much beauty and elegance to that platform. And so let's talk about pricing now. So first of all, with Adobe Connect, you can get a license for for about $500 per person annually. Now, with that, you have to buy at least 2 licenses. You can go through, I recommend you going, not buying directly through Adobe Connect, but buying through a channel partner or strategic partner that they have. And there are several. You can just go to their website and see. There is no upcharge from the resellers, by the way, on Adobe Connect. The price is still the same, but you get so much more when you go through a channel partner. Second, I'll talk about WebEx, and WebEx is a very expensive platform. And for WebEx Training Center, the license is about $2,500 annually for one license. And that's quite pricey. For what you get, but Training Center is the most robust that they have, really. And then now let's talk about Zoom. Zoom is extremely inexpensive. For $14.95 a month in the U.S., you can get a platform, you can use it, and that's a great cost for you over the course of the year. However, what Zoom doesn't have, there's a lot of hidden costs with Zoom. If you want to do a webinar, you will have to, which is where the Q&A feature is found in Zoom, you would have to pay an additional fee. If you want to have more storage, because storage is really limited on Zoom, you would have to pay an additional fee of starting at $40 a month. Golly, that's more than your license. So your cost can quickly go up with Zoom, even though for the basic, if you're just doing the basic stuff, that includes breakouts and polls and chat as well. You can get that for $14.95 a month.
It's great. Thank you, Sonia. You know, guys, we are just about toward the end of our time. I wanted to give people a way to reach out to the three of you directly. If you would like to speak directly to Brent Bystedt or Dan Glaser with the Ken Blanchard Companies, please go to kenblanchard.com/get started. You'll see that there get dash started. That'll take you to a contact form, and you can type in your question for Brent or Dan, and they'll get back in touch with you. If you would like to reach out directly to Sonia, you'll see her contact information there. Email Sonia at go-vlc.com or visit Sonia's website at go-vlc.com. Again, Sonia and her company has been Blanchard's preferred partner for virtual producers. It's been a wonderful relationship, and we recommend them highly. Guys, as we wrap up today's presentation, what's one thing that you would hope that folks would remember walking away from the session? And Dan, let's start with you, and then we'll go to Sonia, and then finally to Brent. If there's one thing that you'd like folks to remember from today's presentation, what would it be?
That's a good question. I think it's really, we went through a lot, and I know that, and you might be feeling a little overwhelmed. And, you know, there's a lot of things in a lot of different platforms, and you might be wondering how to get started. I think there's no wrong answer. I think just getting started is the right thing to do. Just get in there, and understanding your settings might be the most important, actually, because with these different platforms, and especially with Zoom and things like that, there's a lot of things that you need to be aware of and understand what your platform is capable of. So reviewing the settings, going to the tutorials, all three of these platforms have great online tutorials and helping you get started and showing you how. So, I mean, we kind of went through it a little bit just to kind of give you a contrast, but if you really want to get to know and understand how to do those things, visit the support site for these three platforms.
That's great. Thank you, Dan. Sonia, what's your one thing you hope folks will walk away remembering?
I think something Dan said earlier in the presentation today was start with what you have. And, you know, I mean, that's kind of where you are. There are folks right now who don't have huge budgets. Start with what you have. Seek out resources. LinkedIn, follow us on LinkedIn. That's a great way to see what groups we're attached to, and follow other groups to get more information if you're new to the training industry or new to doing virtual. And don't be scared. Don't be scared. Be yourself, and just get out there and rock it.
Brent, how about you from your perspective? What's the one thing you hope folks will remember from our session today?
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo what my colleague said, and just add on to that you know, give it a try. You know, it's easier than it sounds, And each of the platforms that we highlighted have their own links to, and it's on the previous slide here, to getting started pages, to recorded video tutorials on how to use those features. And they also offer live, yeah, there you go, live webinars and live demos of those platforms. So we will provide a copy of the presentation with those hyperlinks in it, and you can go ahead and learn the details of those platforms for yourself if you didn't get your questions answered here. This was just providing you with the basics and an overview. And now, if you want to dive into any one of these platforms, those links will take you straight to where you need to go to learn more.
Brent, thank you so much. And also Sonia and Dan for all the time that you've put into and sharing your time with us with this presentation today. We will have some great follow-up materials going out to all of you who've participated in today's session, including this facilitating virtually mini course. We've just finished creating this. That'll be going out to all of you in the next 2 or 3 business days as a part of your follow-up materials. Brent, Sonia, Dan, thank you so much for your time today. Thanks to all of you for joining us as we explore together how to conduct our first virtual sessions. We really appreciate having you here. We hope you'll join us again for another Blanchard session in the near future. This does conclude today's session. Thanks for joining us today.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.